I wanted to ask you guys, as far as being an interracial couple, what do you guys feel joys of that is? You feel there's difficulties with that? Just kind of share your experience as an interracial couple. What does that mean to you? Like, did you think that you would be involved with somebody of the other race?
Personally, I never gave it a thought. I always just, if I was attracted to you, then I'll let things develop. But I think when I met her, you know, being a 19-year-old, I was looking for something different than what I was trying to be. I was trying to be a gangster or a thug or whatever. But I was trying to turn the corners. You know, I started going to college, and what I seen in her was, you know, somebody. She was from the suburbs. She had it all together, and that's the life I wanted for myself. So I gravitated towards her. I don't know if she felt the same way. If she was looking for a little darkness to her life.
So balance.
But her culture, you know, was attractive to see the way her family did things. You know, the way her family just treated her and responded to her, rather than, you know, my upbringing. So it was exciting for me to get to learn, you know, going to the beach and all stuff like, you know, stuff I don't typically do. And that's what attracted me to her. And, you know, you had some pitfalls, especially among black people. You know, when you get older, you tend to speak differently. And me coming from North Philly, moving up to the Northeast, being around Caucasian people and being around different environments, getting promotions, I have to speak differently, act differently. And now since I have this white woman on my side, I'm white now. So now it's like white boy D, because I'm not speaking with the same slang, the same vernacular that I spoke with 5 years ago. They don't understand. I'm just evolving. You know, I have to speak this way to be accepted into certain standards. And it's not her fault. You know, it's not that I'm trying to identify and be white now, but I get that. So that was, the positive is that I've seen a whole different side of life, but now some people look at me, black men, and I'm white now to them. So it's like I have to, unless I'm speaking with slang or doing certain things, I'm not really as accepted as I was before.
Yeah, I guess you could say I was looking for something different too. And I had gone to an all-girls high school in Philadelphia, but it was, you know, majority white, and I had just started at Temple when I met Derek. So I was looking to, I guess, almost like explore my freedom. But it wasn't necessarily because he was black, it was who he was. You know, he was funny, and he was a little bit bad, and you know, he was living a life that I had never thought of, or anyone I knew was living. So it was exciting. It was exciting to be with him and to go through his side of life with him. But I don't know that I necessarily thought of us as being like interracial, because most of the people we knew, most of our friends, never made it like a thing. You know, the hardest thing for me was dealing with my family, but at a certain point I just stopped dealing with them because it was something I wanted, and if they weren't going to support it, then they just weren't going to be a part of it. And so for a long time we didn't talk. So when I say that I was always accepted by his family, it's because I was always supported by them. You know, for a long time my parents didn't speak to me, and I had the triplets during that time, and I needed help. And Derek's family was always there to help me. They always supported me. They never made me feel bad about our relationship or anything like that. And I'm lucky, because I know a lot of people in my shoes wouldn't have been accepted that way. So
that's good. What would you say may be a advantage or disadvantage, or do you think there is, of being multicultural? For you to be multicultural, do you think there's any advantages or disadvantages of having mixed culture?
I mean, the advantages are being able to, you know, experience different cultures and being able to explore different worlds. I feel like even though my family may have did me a disservice by not talking about race, you know, I was able to explore a whole lot of different options that I probably would not have if I, you know, growing up. So I was able to take trips and, you know, different family vacations, and so the advantages are being able to experience so many different aspects of so many different cultures.
Yeah, I would say the advantage is definitely the cultural aspect, but also in terms of just, I feel like whenever you're an outlier or something, allows you to see kind of the contradictions of things. So I feel like being mixed has really allowed me to kind of see a lot of things other people don't like to admit. Because it's like I'm going between spaces, so I can see things, you know, from a different perspective. You know, like I know intimate things about white people that other black folks don't, because I've been in these spaces with my family. You know what I mean? Where like they might want to hide things, but they can't. You know what I mean? So it's like, right? It's like I see things. It's like, hold up, you know. So I feel like that's an advantage, but on the flip side, it could also turn into a disadvantage, because I feel like depending on your family history and depending on your family's relationship to the broader society, sometimes, you know, it can be extremely difficult for kids to reconcile certain things. Like I think, like, what would it be like if my family was involved in slavery? You know what I mean? By people in my family who actively participated in different types of things. Like that might be something that I wouldn't know how to iron out that contradiction. You know what I mean? Like, and I think about that in terms of like how, you know, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with, you know, having children, period. But I think about the disadvantages. Sometimes kids can be way over their heads in terms of the resources they need to make sense of things because of whatever the contradictions might be between the different aspects of who they are. And then they have a warring identity. And that seems like a very difficult trial for a child to undergo. Like, how do I reconcile this identity where I have a conflict in a different type of way? You know what I mean? Like, if I couldn't talk to my folks, like if there wasn't that space, you know, if there wasn't that opportunity to be like, all right, let's come to understanding, if those lines were just drawn in the sand, I think that would be, and it is for, you know, people that have that experience, extremely challenging.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of what we're talking about here today is, you know, there are a number of children, and Josette kind of shares that don't have that platform. They don't have the discussion in their home to really deal with these, you know, this inner turmoil, like not knowing, okay, how do I identify myself? What does that mean? I know that I'm treated differently, but I don't know why. Where do I get that information? So I love the fact too that you said for you as a child, you kind of did some of that research and said, you know what, I'm going to learn about this and I'm going to expose myself to it. And then now in turn, you can kind of pour that into, you know, your children and have those conversations. So.
Go ahead. One of the disadvantages, I guess, of being multiracial is having the ability to blend in when it's convenient, because you don't really stop to understand what the struggle might have been if you know, weren't able to do that. So in a way, I guess we're very privileged to be able to do that, to whatever circumstance, be able to blend in and not have to deal with the struggle, the challenge that's really being presented. So that is a disadvantage, because you're not really learning what the struggle is. So if, you know, you approach the same situation as a black person, you're not really understanding the struggle that that black person may have had to go through to get in the situation that you're in. But as a white person also, you're not really understanding the struggle either. So you may not have to struggle, but you're not understanding it either.
You know, like the second that 1,000%. That's something I talk to my kids a lot. You know what I mean? In terms of like just, you know, because colorism is a huge thing too. It's the ability to, like you said, fluctuate between different spaces. So getting them to understand, like, you have to take responsibility for your privileges. And I think that's one thing I learned growing up too. Is like, there wasn't so much whatever negative feedback I got from my black community wasn't about being mixed, it's about the way I was carrying myself. So it's like not recognizing the privileges that I had, or not recognizing those things, you know, those advantages or those perspectives I had that were different what other people had to go through. You're not realizing how, even though we're in the same community, my struggle and your struggle are very different because of all these things that are given to me from white society. And I think that, yeah, that can definitely be a huge disadvantage if the multiracial children don't take responsibility for that.
Advantages, I mean, damn. Like the kids, like you don't really realize it until you take them to a different environment, like going down to Philly to visit my mom and stuff. We go down there and the kids are like, there's trash in the streets. Like, like, give me a proof and stuff. Like, why is there so much trash? And it's like, it's different. Like, you know, you don't really pay it no mind. And the kids just pick up on things. You know, because as adults, we so busy with life that sometimes we forget how to be a kid, and we forget how to open our minds, because sometimes we walk around with blinders. You know, we so filter stuff out that we so busy, I gotta get this, I gotta get that, and then you accept things as norm. Growing up in Philly, I mean, that was the norm. Like, there was trash, there was alley cats, there was all, like, you know, the kids are running after a alley cat and a dog, and like, no, you know, don't do that, like, you know, but it needs a home. It goes back to advantages, and, you know, and taking advantage of those things and explaining to them, you know, they're not savages. It's just, this is how it is. And, you know, one person can make the difference and stuff, but it takes a whole community to accept those ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just,
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. I'm just going to close out with this final question. I just wanted you guys really to give advice to other people that may be in your situation, that may not know how to really embrace themselves as an interracial couple, or they may be struggling. They may not be accepted by, you know, one side of their family or the other. What type of advice would you give them? You know, what would you tell them as a couple as far as growing their relationship or whatever the case may be? Just kind of giving a glimmer of hope. At the end of the day, this discussion, we want people to take away from it a nugget that they can take and empower themselves and change and look at things differently and be more open-minded. So, and then Josette and Mike, we're going to have you guys as well kind of give some advice, your closing statement, whatever, something on your heart that you always wanted to share or say. You know, we want you guys to kind of feel free to close out that way.
Stay true to what you believe in, because I believed in Derek and I knew who he was, and I knew what our relationship could be, and I held on to that. And because I held on to it for so long, and I lived it, and I showed that I knew and I believed in our relationship, it eventually changed people's opinions of us. So if you really believe it, then you have to hold on to it, because otherwise people will try to push you the other way.
And I'll piggyback off that and just say, you know, as you stay true with who you are, be comfortable, be confident, and forgiving and patient, because people are ignorant and they base their perceptions off their personal experiences. And, you know, once you be who you are and just be patient with people, they'll learn to accept you and accept your relationships.
I like that. Josette?
I guess I would say, to piggyback off of what you said, to be true to yourself and your identity. I feel like it's extremely emotionally painful and physically painful sometimes to try to alter your identity or try to change who you are. And the longer you perpetuate that, it's really hard to go back to it later in life. So if, you know, you're having an internal struggle and you're trying to figure out where to fit in, the more you embrace yourself and your unique identity, the more long-lasting relationships you will keep, the more people you attract who respect you for who you are and will stay with you for the long term. Whereas if you try to alter yourself to fit in with a certain group, or, you know, fit in with a, try to get friends, you know, they're not going to be there later in life, and they're not going to respect you for you doing that to yourself. So stay true to yourself, you know, embrace your uniqueness, your identity, and don't feel ashamed to speak out, to try to seek advice. You know, you're not alone. Even if you don't have someone who identifies as mixed race or as, you know, multicultural, you can still get feedback from other people who may be having similar experiences. So there's no reason to keep that internal, even though you may not have somebody identical to your situation. You know, always reach out.
Yeah, I would say, you know, learn as much as you can about race. You know, you have a responsibility to be able to figure out all the idiosyncrasies, all these dynamics, and know how everything works, because you have a situation where you have a unique vantage point. So you have a responsibility to be part of the problem, part of the solution. So learn as much as you can, and also realize that you are the fruition of your ancestors, so you can either participate and contribute to something that's actually going to help benefit those who are oppressed, or you can just make it worse by pretending like it's not your problem. So take responsibility for trying to really understand who you are and how to take that identity not as a point of selfishness and navel gazing, but as something that's a launch pad to be able to actually do something good for your communities.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jose and I just wanted to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of this beautiful day to come out and really share your experience. We understand that this is not an easy conversation always to have, but we know that ultimately this discussion that we're having today will be able to help someone else. That's the goal, really, to create a platform to empower other people, to educate people of what it's like and what the experience is, and hopes of changing, you know, their thinking, and just encouraging biracial, interracial, and people in general just to be more open-minded. Did you want to add anything, sir?
No. You said it. I think you said it. I can't even top that.
Oh, cut it out. Well, thank you guys so much once again. We appreciate you.
Thank you.